You know how in dreams, things seem to happen so erratically and with zero respect to time? Like 1 minute you're heading to your kitchen to get a snack, and the next you find yourself in your old childhood home talking to your math teacher about the nuances and intricacies of vampires in modern media. I'm sure all of you are familiar with what I'm saying. This whir of nonsensical events that seem to flow into each other with such rapidity and a jarring lack of transition. This chaotic mess of instances which blend together disorientingly. These conversations which jump from one place to another with reckless abandon, thoughts being ping-ponged around a room, ideas and phrases being repeated endlessly, even though they have no bearing or resemblance to what's actually happening in the dream. It's a hectic load of shit, and you don't realize how meaningless it all is until it's finished and you've woken up in a cold sweat, questioning if your choice of mac and cheese directly before bed was actually that smart of a decision. In short, that was what Amsterdam felt like. I went to the movie theater just yesterday, primarily with the intent of watching the tea-filled, controversy-mired drama that was Don't Worry Darling. And while I was aware that the behind-the-scenes drama for that movie was probably more interesting than the movie itself, I still wanted to see everything for myself. However, fearing cringe, I switched up at the last minute and went with Amsterdam. In my head, I thought that a movie led by Christian Bale and having such an all-star cast was a semi-surefire hit, especially with the good things I'd heard about the director, David O Russel. I mean, I wasn't really familiar with his previous work, but I saw that he was well-regarded, well-respected.
Fuck you! I'm just trying to fucking help you, do you understand me?
Wait,
I'm being a fucking collaborator. I was trying to help you figure out your fucking
I thought that...
Hey, bitch,
oh no.
I'm not here to be fucking yelled at.
Alright, okay. Quirkiness of the director aside, boy did I regret my switch up. Bye-bye to all that saucy Olivia Wilde / Don't Worry Darling drama, which made the movie interesting before it even started, and hello to the clusterfuck that is Amsterdam. With what I think may be one of the most terribly written scripts in any big-budget Hollywood film I've seen in a while. Amsterdam tries to be a wacky, zany, crime comedy type of deal with lovable characters and an overarching theme of love, friendship, and kindness, with a clear-cut political message to boot. Every theme and thought within the movie is smacked straight into your face with the nuance and subtlety of a speeding freight train, leaving you with no room to think or analyze or interpret or make your own conclusions, deductions, or assumptions in any way. But let's dissect this more clearly. My biggest gripe with Amsterdam, besides its very disjointed story, was its dialogue. The main issue here is that the dialogue simply does not flow well. It's not realistic, if realism and immersion is what Russell was going for, and it is neither smart nor witty, if that was instead the intended effect. Moreover, it does not feel like it advances the story forward. It does not push the plot meaningfully or add anything to it, and neither does it entertain. It just meanders uselessly, creating a stale, boring rhythm that drags on for way too long for most characters. And in the rare instances where it's important, where it actually has value for the plot or for the characters, it instead comes off so incredibly ham-fisted that you feel violated just hearing it. It never lands easy on the ears, but is instead either repeated endlessly to be hammered into your skull or shot at you in an unending spray of exposition. In our first scene between two of our main characters, Bale's Dr. Burt and his best friend, John David Washington's lawyer, Harold, Harold is telling Burt that he needs his assistance performing a particular medical procedure and is attempting to convince him to do it by telling Burt that it is meaningful to him. Burt asks why, and we get this cursed response from Harold. Well, you care about the annual gala, don't you? And you always say it's important for us vets to have reunions, to be remembered. And you say it's great medicine for us to get together and sing. Don't you say that? The very obvious issue here is that while we stand at the front gates of this movie, still not having even crossed the 5-minute mark, we receive this character info dump from Harold, trying to explain Bert's personality to us. And it doesn't come across smoothly, but instead is so long and extended that it just feels like the writer's attempt to tell us all this information in one go, without bothering to show it to us. Instead of showing us that Bert cares greatly about the gala and the vets Through his actions, we instead are force-fed this fact by Harold. On the other hand, it could be argued that we already know this information about Bert from the film's introductory scene, as we see him and his interactions with his vet patients and learn more about how he experiments with medicine to help them. But in that case, if we've already been delivered the information in our literal first scene, there is no need to repeat it with such a heavy hand, literally not 1 minute later. On both sides of the equation, this is an undoubtedly bad move, and is one example in an incredibly long list in this movie. Extremely expository lines like that are more than common, and Russell seems intent on pelting you with them time and time again, so that there is not an ounce of room for you to have any alternative thoughts or feelings, but the ones he is presenting. Russell is basically hammering you down onto the roof of a train and forcing you to just lay there motionless for the ride along this one singular unchanging railroad. And so what we're left with is dialogue that is lacking in content, as it is neither entertaining nor particularly informative, at least not effectively so, and that's just on the content side of things. As for the actual structure or presentation, these top-tier A-list Hollywood celebrities have to contend with dialogue that sounds like it was written by 5th graders for their first-person point of view English writing lessons. Every line seems so forced, wooden, and unhuman. It kind of feels like you're watching an over-the-top parody of life in the 50s.
Sure great to have you to talk to.
Remember, I'll be watching for you on the big screen.
Okay, Irene. Won't that be the day?
To add to its static nature, the dialogue all seems to share one tone. The characters all speak with the same voice, and despite the presence of a phenomenal cast, it still greatly shows. They never feel distinct enough with how they talk or what they say, making it evidently clear that all of the dialogue spawns from one source, from one writer, or at least from a room of writers who finalize the script under one person's singular tone. It's a problem many modern movies face, given that writing dialogue is usually one of the harder aspects of writing in general. One big example of this that comes to mind is in Matt Reeves' The Batman, with the incessant usage of the phrase Jesus.
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 So even though it is a commonly said word, it still gives off the sense that all of these characters came from the mind of one writer, using that writer's own fixed vocabulary. Making your characters sound unique, distinct, and separated requires a lot of skill that our buddy, David Russell, does not seem to possess, or at least conveniently lost for the duration of this movie. And thus this awkwardness in the dialogue ends up giving us characters that, as opposed to being unique and colorful in their own ways, end up becoming pale copies of each other. These shortcomings and general lack of focus on dialogue came as a shock to me, given that based on a recent interview with Russell and the stars, this movie had actually been in the works for over 5 years. In that same interview, director Russell and Christian Bale discuss how they got together to write and develop the movie, and how they wanted to create unique, likable characters that they would love to hang out with. And honestly, it's sad to read, because it does genuinely feel like there was an honest, passionate attempt to make some really interesting, fully fleshed out characters, both by Russell and by the very talented cast. Bale went full Bale, and he stalked some people in his efforts to create more for his character Bert. Margot Robbie took up the twisted yet hauntingly beautiful art that her character Valerie is interested in, and became almost obsessed with it. But that was sadly still not enough, as the characters came out feeling almost hollow, like one-dimensional children's cartoon characters. More than that, the effect of this badly written dialogue does not stop here. In addition to its content issues and its presentation issues, this static, robotic dialogue makes for a very awkward delivery. So in addition to damaging the general flow and plot of the movie, and in addition to damaging the individuality of its characters and their unique voices, it also greatly detracts from the stars' performances. Admittedly, I'd only seen John David Washington in Tenet before this, but I quite enjoyed his performance as a no-nonsense straight man. However, in Amsterdam, he ends up bombing in a slightly similar role. His acting is all over the place, with stilted, awkward delivery that comes off confused at best and amateurish at worst. It is so plain, basic, and unbelievably forgettable. And while a character like Harold is meant to shine when bouncing off his friends Bert and Valerie, even this does not work, as it seems that Bale and Margot's incredible performances just completely eclipse that of Washington. making him easily the most boring part of the whole ordeal. Not even Margot brings her best to the table, as her Valerie and Washington's Harold are supposed to be a couple, but sadly lack any inkling of chemistry. It's the blandest, driest relationship I've seen in a while, and to me it seemed like Margot's performance dipped in quality whenever she shared a scene with Robo-John. And while Bale's Bert verges on the absurd at some points, diving into the realms of overacting, he still manages to be incredibly entertaining, the only diamond in the rough that is Amsterdam. But it isn't much of a surprise. You can tell how much love Bale holds for this character, and he treats him with the obsession and dedication that he's known to give to all his roles. He's fun, he's sweet, he's goofy, and he's lovable, and it manages to work, despite the flaws of the dialogue, because of the sheer strength of Bale's performance, and perhaps a little because of the fact that the character's inherently aloof nature and goofiness gives us more leeway in accepting awkward or odd lines or scenes. Anya Taylor-Joy and Rami Malek also seem to do a good job, which is perhaps also possible because of the zaniness of their own characters, who are so weird and quirky that it's decently swallowable. On the other hand, De Niro's performance, while unaffected by the awkwardness of the dialogue, is still not memorable or particularly interesting in any way. And that's saying something, because this is De Niro we're talking about, and in my opinion, De Niro has never not stolen the spotlight. And so as we've seen thus far, the issues in dialogue alone have created problems with the movie's entertainment value, with its character identities, and with its stars' performances. But the problems don't stop there. If the movie's script was generally good as far as plot and pacing, dialogue aside, then perhaps the movie could still be salvaged. But sadly, this movie's script is lacking in all of its aspects. The main plot of the movie is a scattered mess, with a pace that chugs along at times until it stops to a screeching halt, pausing you in your tracks for a mundane 5 minutes of a useless scene. And that's if it's not stopping the whole flow of the main narrative to fling you into an extended flashback 12 years prior, breaking any sense of suspense or tension in our character's current predicament. It is just so jam-packed with useless scenes and dialogue, random bouts of narration that pop up jarringly, and a needlessly convoluted main story that loses itself trying so hard to be smart and interesting that it forgets to be entertaining, and actually fails at being smart and interesting. It just felt to me like all throughout the movie, I kind of knew what vibe Russell was going for. I knew the feelings he meant to invoke, the general atmosphere of adventure and quirkiness that he meant to establish, the tone of the character relationships and dialogue he meant to set. I feel like I knew what he meant to do and what he was aiming for everywhere, but it just didn't feel like it ever, at any point, worked. And again, with the amount of work we've learned has gone into this movie, it's an absolute shame that it turned out the way it did. And don't get me wrong, while the script is terrible, the movie does have things going for it, as is expected of an $80 million Hollywood production. Its presentation is undeniably attractive, the cinematography is interesting, if seemingly random or aimless at times. The colors are on point and do well to create this nostalgic feel, coupled by a magnificent costume design and an articulately made set which accurately represents the time period. But to me, excellence in visual representation can never really save a film from a badly written script. That's just the reality of it. No matter how star-studded your cast or how much money you have to create the most professional-looking film, you're still going to fall on your ass if your script does not work. And so, yeah, the movie ended up being this mind-numbing fever dream. The only reason I didn't get up and leave halfway through was because I still hoped it would pull something off, and because my respect for cinema as an art form would not let me. But boy, I really wanted to. So if you haven't seen Amsterdam, I wouldn't really recommend it. But if you have, make sure to tell me what you thought of it in the comments below. Tell me where I'm wrong, where I'm right, and just what you thought in general. Let's just talk about it. And if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you could leave a like and maybe subscribe. It would honestly mean a lot and help me greatly if you did. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll hopefully see you soon. Take care and goodbye.